I ended up getting this maintenance job where I was picking up trash, cutting grass. You're supposed to be like this tennis star, everything taken care of. My mother was selling real estate at the time. There was this property that she sold that the guy that bought it is like, look, I'm not going to use it for more than a couple times a year. Could you guys rent it short term? Who do the people that we want to work with follow?
You would reach out to those people and then say, can I incent you to promote?
Yeah, we were inviting them for free to stay at a property. So
Brilliant.
Who's going to say no to staying at a $10,000 a night villa? Attention is the strongest currency.
I met a broker here. I do all of these different things, but for whatever reason, I put out a video, it gets 20 views. You have 1 million followers on Instagram. That's not an easy thing to do. How did you do that? Welcome back to Rise Podcast, Life Stories of Accomplished Individuals. Welcome back. Thanks for being back here. As you know, the premise of this podcast is to extract as much value from accomplished people to understand their life story, to understand their life path, and to really help ourselves by listening to these stories. So today we have got Alvaro Nunez Alfaro.
That's right.
Alvaro, first of all, welcome. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate
you, brother.
it.
I appreciate being here.
A little bit of kind of context and background as to how you and I met. You were one of the first people. It was a very kind act. You were one of the first people who reached out to me. You saw that I was a newcomer. You saw me on social media. You reached out to me, and you invited me to be kind of like a guest. You were doing Instagram Lives at the time, and this was back in, I want to say maybe July of 2021.
Yeah.
We had just sorry, I'm lying. Maybe September of 2021, around that, September, October, and you had reached out to me, complete stranger, and I loved it, and you were so kind to me, and you asked me to be on the podcast, on the live, and then you invited me out to lunch.
Yeah.
I remember that. And you and I went out to lunch, and I told you my story, how I came from Canada. You told me your story, how you came from Madrid, from Spain, and we hit it off. And since then, we just keep running into each other. Dubai.
That was fun.
Dubai, and it was because I didn't know you were going to be in Dubai, because we haven't been talking that much since we had that lunch, which we're gonna rectify. But I didn't know, and then I saw you there. And I was like, whoa, Valeria pointed you out, and it was such a pleasant surprise. And, we ended up we ended up partying, and I mean, partying like, not like partying like teenagers, but like adults, we were.
Right, and it was the grand opening of the Atlantis, and I remember it was one of those festivities and moments where everybody's eyeballs were into it, and we just bump into each other.
Yeah.
One of the most amazing setups in history.
Wasn't that like, I talk about that experience a lot, like off camera, just with my friends and stuff. How did you even how did that come about for you? I mean, I'm assuming you were invited by one of the PR firms that was repping the Atlantis.
Correct.
So when that first came across your desk, that experience, what did you think of it? Like, what did you think this was?
Well, completely the opposite from you, because I know your story. But for me, it was a great opportunity. I thought it was something unique, something that was going to be very special. Yeah. And just knowing the lineup of things that were setting up for us, it just looked like a great opportunity to go and explore.
Yeah, we didn't know.
Yeah, you told me you didn't even look until the last minute.
I didn't even look at it. All I saw was come to Dubai. They gave us some of the numbers and what they're covering and stuff, and I was just like, I don't know, Valeria, let's go. I've never been to Dubai. Let's go to Dubai.
And again, for those that don't know what we're talking about, we're talking about the opening of the Atlantis, one of the most expensive openings in history for a hotel, where they invited only celebrities and influencers from all over the world to experience this unique experience. And I think that the Beyonce's concert on top of it, that was the cherry on top.
They paid $24 million to Beyonce to perform for 1 hour.
Not bad.
Not bad, right?
Not bad.
And what's interesting is that from a marketing perspective, we're gonna jump into things, but just to cover this off, because I want to, you're one of the few people who actually was also there that is in my kind of proximity that we can talk about this with. But it was kind of it was a genius thing that they did. I mean, first of all, they had no budget at all, right? They had no cap, they had no limit to their budget.
Yes.
And they invited, it was, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of influencers from different countries. So they had PR firms in different countries, and we were probably reached out to by the same firm because we're both in the United States. And there were hundreds of influencers there. And my guess, if you add up the reach of all of the influencers that were there, including you, including, myself, Valeria, you're looking at probably, I don't know, hundreds of millions of eyeballs, at the Atlantis that were on the Atlantis for that period of time. And then on top of that, you throw in, a $24 million concert by Beyonce. So it was wild. It was a very cool experience. But we're not here to talk about Dubai. We're here to talk about you. I want to read something that I've prepared for you. I did a little bit of research, outside of the things that I know about you. So I'm going to read this, and then, the format for this podcast is we're going to jump into it, and I want to learn a lot about what you do. I want to learn a lot about your business when it comes to the real estate business. I want to learn about your book, although I feel I know a lot about your book. But I want to talk about you, and I want to understand your path and how you got to where you got. So I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna read what I have for you. So Alvaro Nunez Alfaro, hailing from Madrid, Spain, first came to the U.S. on a tennis scholarship and eventually got his executive MBA from Harvard. Now with over 1 million followers on Instagram, he is a multi-hyphenate entrepreneur, influencer, best-selling author, skydiver, helicopter pilot, ultra-endurance race competitor, mountain climber, motivational speaker, and world traveler. The company Alvaro founded and operates, Super Luxury Group, boasts almost 680,000 Instagram followers, and is revolutionizing the real estate industry by assembling an elite network of real estate professionals, media partners, influencers, and luxury brands, facilitating the sale of multi-million-dollar homes globally. The following is a description from his book titled Level Up, Turning Your Obstacles into Superpowers. And I think this is very defining about you, and I specifically took this passage for that reason. Everyone wishes they were living their dream life, but few are willing to take the risk of making it happen. Instead, they keep wishing and hoping, but eventually discover life has passed them by and their dreams remain unfulfilled. Many who do try are derailed by obstacles. But what if you could turn obstacles into superpowers? What if you committed to becoming the hero of your own story? So, look, I find that extremely fascinating, like that passage and that statement, and just your list of accolades overall. So we're going to jump into the details about these things, but take me back to you as a kid. Like you as a kid growing up in Madrid. You were born in Madrid, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so tell me about your family. Like what were the circumstances around your early childhood?
It was a beautiful family, very competitive. We love to live life to the fullest. I'm the youngest out of the siblings. I have a younger sister, but then I have 2 older brothers and an older sister. Both my older brothers, they were very competitive. One of them was actually an elite professional Formula race driver.
Really?
Yeah, he did like World Series, GP2, and even like the test driver in Formula 1. And growing up, looking up to him, I thought, man, this is amazing. I want to get into elite sports. And I was a bit taller, so the car situation will not fit for me. So they put me into tennis. And growing up in a competitive family, we always aim for the best, right? Mm-hmm. My father always was pushing us to become the best version of ourselves in whatever we did, whether it was sports, school. So there was a little bit of pressure, but that pressure was what really pushed you forward. And tennis became my go-to, right? So
tennis was like, so initially, when it comes to kind of developing a mindset of achieving and a mindset of pushing yourself and, bettering yourself, it started with sports?
Yeah, I think sports is the core that really unified us as a family as well, because it was all about sports. It was all about doing things together. It was about growing. It was about keeping that discipline, right? To keep on evolving. And that translated automatically into other things like school and other values that you bring on.
And how early, I'm actually asking for selfish reasons, because I'm always, as you know, I have 3 little boys, and I'm always pushing myself to push them to do sports, to develop that mentality. How early did this all start for you?
No, at a young age. And it was not just tennis. As a kid, you need to do things that you also love and that you enjoy doing. And if all your friends are playing soccer, then yes, you're going to play soccer as well. So I ended up doing a variety of different sports, and I was not forced to be just a tennis player, right? In fact, they recommended me to do certain sports, including martial arts, right? I ended up doing judo because that gives you that discipline, that confidence, that courage to face different obstacles and challenges in life. So a lot of the things that you learn through sports, they translate into life. And from a young age, that's something that it was really put into our brains.
And this was, would you say that this was more like your dad's initiative or your mom's?
Both. You know, I believe that both at the end of the day want the best for us as their kids.
Sure.
And they need to agree, right, that there is something that needs to be, I guess, recommended or pushed towards the kids to do. And in this case for us, it was always being really good at school and being very good at sports.
So is this, let me ask you something. Is this kind of like a national thing? Is that, do you feel the attitude of the country at large, or is this something that was specific to your family?
You know, it's funny because I get that question sometimes asked because Spain, as a small country, it has developed like really elite athletes.
Sure.
In fact, just this last weekend, Spain on the women's side won the World Cup in soccer, right? And then we have now Carlos Alcaraz in tennis, #1, which also did an amazing tournament recently. So you'd see these elite Spanish athletes that come out of this country where in reality, you know, a lot of other countries that have a big push for sports, they don't create these elite athletes. And I think that it's that courage, that passion, that power that we put into what we do. And it's part of the DNA, I will say. So we always go full in.
Okay. And tell me about like your folks. So what did they do? What were their like, what did they do? What was their vocation?
Which one?
Your parents, your mom and dad.
My parents. So my father was a developer and an architect growing up.
Wow.
And he became actually very successful at it until we had a huge crisis in Spain, and he also was not living the best lifestyle, let's say. So he had a heart attack, got into coma. So we ended up
is he still around?
Yeah, he's still,
okay.
Yeah,
is he recovered?
Yeah. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know how to say it, last week he also had a surgery, third one, and he's like recovering now. But he's somebody that is a tough guy. He's not giving up. Was
his love for real estate and architecture, is that what drove you to inevitably get into the industry you're in now?
Yes. I think that it was something that inevitably, by looking at what he was doing and just enjoying the fact that beautiful homes was something that I was passionate about from a kid's age. And then moving to the States later on in life, it was something that I did not think that it was going to be the right move for me, just because of the opportunities that the US was offering in terms of becoming an entrepreneur later on in the path. And I still had that passion on it. So eventually all the things combined later on in life.
Okay. And then did your parents, like, okay, at what point did you think you were going to become an entrepreneur? Did you make a decision that you're going to start taking action that will map to inevitably get you to be an entrepreneur, or you didn't think about that until you got to the United States?
No, I mean, you always have something inside. You know, you have that gut feeling that you want to do something bigger. Whether you know it or not, there is something inside that tells you that you want to create, that you want to build something. And eventually, once I was in the States, I saw all these opportunities, right? Something that everybody was building things, everybody was helping each other, everybody was pushing each other to grow, and ideas were flowing, something that I was not used to here back home.
Is that different than in Spain? Is Spain as a culture, and Madrid specifically where you grew up, is it less about that? Because I noticed it here too. So, you know, coming from Canada, it's not the same as it is here, in the sense that I feel that people here, and you're a perfect example, when you and I met, people here are motivated to network socially. People want to become friends. People want to learn about each other, both professionally and personally. And then, you know, people see the value in that. And then there's way more business opportunities. People think more globally here. So that was the case coming from, you know, from Toronto, although there are many successful people in Toronto, but that was like kind of on a per capita basis. That was what I noticed coming from Toronto to Miami. Was it a similar thing from Madrid?
100%. And look, nothing wrong with it, but you are kind of like going a path of getting a good education so that you can get a good job, right?
Yeah.
And
in Madrid,
in Madrid, yes.
So that was the kind of
That's the path.
That's the path.
99% of the people follow. And there is not as much support than you get here in the States to start a business, right? There is a bit more of an obstacle pathway.
Right.
And this is one of the things that I also saw here as an opportunity, because you can just open a business right away. You can start asking right away to get things in place, and you start moving, you start creating. There is not that much resistance at the beginning, which in order for you to build momentum, you need to find that path of least resistance so that you can actually start building the momentum, and then later on you're going to face those obstacles, which is great.
Yeah.
And look, I gotta say also that at the end of the day, it's not that you're doing something because you want to start a business. It's because you're following a passion. You're following something that is fueling your soul with something that is much more meaningful. And sometimes working for somebody might be a great thing that you love doing, but for the majority of people, it's just only as a vehicle to fulfill the rest of the things that they want to do in life. So it's.
But your dad was an entrepreneur though, is an entrepreneur in Spain. Is your dad still in Spain?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's in Spain.
So you grew up. What I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to pinpoint and I'm trying to understand where that kind of turning point was for you and what got you down this path. Because a lot of the people that I speak with, you know what, you'd be surprised how many people DM me and ask me for direction where they're early on, and it's growing more and more. And you know what's funny? I have a lot of women reaching out to me to talk to their husbands or boyfriends, which is strange, right? But I guess the reason. So
I'll tell you a turning point.
I'm trying to understand what
look,
was it?
I want to give you a little summary of what happened, right?
Yeah,
so
please.
I was following the path of becoming a professional tennis player. That was what I all had in my mind.
That was the
and
path.
as a kid, you're always dreaming of doing something, right? And whether you want to become a professional athlete or do something else, for me it was to become a professional tennis player. And it was right there at the end of high school. In fact, I was in a school where we were only professional athletes. In my classroom, we had people like John Ram, who's right now #1 in the world in golf, Carlos Sainz, who's in Formula One. We had Carolina Marin, who won gold medals in badminton, Christian Toro, who won also gold medal in rowing. So we had top athletes from Spain. And for me, it was becoming that professional tennis player. So right after I graduated, I had to decide whether I was going to go in that direction or go into just education. Because in Spain, we don't have programs like here in the States where you can do both. And it was right there where my father had the heart attack. We were facing that huge economical crisis, and we lost everything. How
old were you when that happened?
16.
Okay, so let's back up for a second. You're 16. Okay, you're 16, and I'm thinking this is clearly an obstacle. Is this part of the inspiration for your book?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're 16, huge downturn in Spain. Your father suffers this medical crisis. You're feverishly trying to go down the path of being a professional athlete. This happens. So was this a catalyst for you to say, hey, like I have to change my life path, or I have to do something that will put me in a better financial situation? I'm trying to pinpoint it.
Right, and that's something I mentioned in the book. In fact, that's how it starts, because this was the pivot moment on changing the direction that I was heading. And in this case, it was about leveraging all the things that already were in my plate that I've been building over the years. And in this case, it was tennis. So instead of just giving up on tennis, because look, going into that path of trying to become a professional tennis player is expensive. And you never know if it's going to happen, right? So all of a sudden investing in coaches, traveling, and then later on maybe be derailed by an injury.
Yeah.
It did not seem very, very positive at the time. So it's, okay, how do we leverage tennis to build something better than just going to school? And the States, it was a great opportunity, the American dream, right? I remember my mother was pushing me to do it because it was a great opportunity to get a scholarship, get a good education, get a new experience, learn the language, and open myself up to new possibilities.
So the financial crisis happens, and I guess your pivot was then to leave Spain. So you left. Okay, so at 16 you left?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize you were that young. So you left at 16.
Almost 17, yes.
Okay, so you're 17 years old. I mean, look, you're a kid still. Right?
Yeah.
You're a kid. Let's face it. Like I think at 17, we're all still children to a certain degree. Some are more mature than others, but you've left on a tennis scholarship. You obviously you got your papers together. You were able to come to the United States, and then the scholarship means that you're at a school. Like you're at a school. You're doing your academics, and at the same time you're playing tennis for the school.
Yeah.
So you're on a, okay. It's interesting. You're the second person that I've interviewed that went to another country on a sports scholarship. There was a gentleman in here who eventually became a very successful artist, like painting. Yeah, Anthony Ricciardi. He was on the show, and he went for a baseball scholarship. But okay, so you left Spain. You went at the age of 17. You went on a tennis scholarship. Where did you go? What state?
I went to New Mexico.
To New Mexico.
Yeah,
okay.
out of all places. No, reality is that I had very humble beginnings, right? It was about finding myself in a position where I could financially continue growing in the direction that I wanted to go. But I also didn't know any better, right? I was actually heading towards the only universities that will give me 100% scholarship and that had a strong tennis team. Yeah. And that will work with my lack of English capabilities because I didn't speak English at the time.
Okay, so you arrived to New Mexico. You're 17. You're playing tennis. Academically, that must be challenging because you don't speak English, right? At the time, it sounds scary to me. Like at 17, I wouldn't have done something. I would have been too scared.
Look, the reality is that life becomes on the other side of fear.
Yes.
And I think that it was right there at that moment where I started to look at the possibilities because I arrived into this school. The coach that hired me was no longer there. He left to a different university. And as I was supposed to become that tennis star, captain of the tennis team, and just take everybody else to the nationals, first few weeks, in fact, I got injured. I broke my foot. And they took my scholarship away. And most people will have said, well, screw this. I'm going back home. I'm going back to my parents' place, and I'm going to do something else.
This was in the first week?
Not the first week, but the first couple of months, yes.
The first couple of months, you break your foot, they take away the scholarship. Yeah. So how are you expected to pay for anything?
Well, that's the reality. I had to figure it out. Either give up or said, well, there is something in here that I can overcome if I work a bit smarter and harder.
What did you do?
Well, first of all, I called back home.
Yeah.
And that was right there where I got that big realization because I was starting to become so negative and self-pity about the whole situation that I let that derail me from the actual purpose of why I moved to the States, which was to build myself into a position where I could help my family, right?
Yeah.
And I remember being on the phone with my sister, and she was really struggling with the whole situation, and she was just expressing that painful situation, and that woke me up, and it's like, well, I'm in the States. Use this as an opportunity to continue going in the direction that you wanted to go, which is to build yourself, grow, and help. And I decided to go into the different alternatives that could allow me to continue being in the States. And that was finding different scholarships academically. It was looking into different job opportunities on the school and just heal myself quickly enough so that I could be back on court and get back a tennis scholarship.
Okay, so a couple of questions. So you're facing with this situation, the scholarship gets taken away, you need to start making some kind of money to pay for this. I'm assuming, are you getting any kind of financial help from back home?
No, zero.
Okay. So I'm getting anxious talking to you about it. Like, I know you're sitting here now and you're well put together. So obviously it ended well, but it's causing me anxiety thinking, you know what causes me anxiety? What caused me anxiety is thinking that if it was one of my kids, because my eldest is 10 and in 7 years he'll be 17, and to think that he'd be in that scary situation far away from me, and I don't have any kind of ability to help him, and he's injured, it would be very sad and scary for me as a father, and I can only imagine how sad and scary it was for you to be in that situation. Okay, so what did you do? What did you do?
Well, you have always the comfort zone, right? Whether going back home, talking to the people that is always telling you what you want to hear, which is come back home, it will be fine, you can start school here, this and that. Or you can actually go into the uncomfortable zone, which is where you start looking into things that are going to make you grow. And staying there, it was going to help me grow. So I started to be a bit more creative and start looking into different job positions. And I found the only one available, which was in the maintenance department. Believe it or not, I ended up getting this maintenance job where I was picking up trash, cutting grass, and all around the dormitories where I was living, and also the tennis courts. So it was quite funny because at the time, as a young boy, you're supposed to be like this tennis star, everything taken care of, and now you're there, you're like picking up trash, you are on crutches, you are like literally like being asked day after day by people is like, are you punished? Like, what's the situation? So it was a bit humiliating, but at the same time, it was humbling. And I think that moments like this define who you become as a person. You know, a lot of people talk about your why, your vision, and those are very, very important elements for you to move forward in a strong direction. But one of the things that I've learned throughout the years is the how. How you actually go through those moments is what defines your character, that defines who you are.
So what I'd like to know is I'd like you to explain that how, because look, we're now talking about, like, we've uncovered this. This to me is a huge turning point, because it's like, to your point, you could have just turned around and gone into your safe space, but you didn't. You went into this difficult space, limping along, literally, feeling humiliated, working hard, figuring out how to make ends meet. I guess my question is I think most other people would have taken the safer road, and you didn't. So I'd like to know, and I'd like for my listeners to know, how did you, I'm trying to phrase it correctly, like, how did you get that attitude? How did you push yourself into that? Especially at such a, I think grown people, like adults, would have a problem with doing what you did. How were you able to do it? Or do you think it was just like maybe it was just ignorance, or like you didn't even, you're like, I'll just, I don't know, like I'm trying to pinpoint how it is you did this.
And I think it's a good question, because sometimes people forget that everything lays down into that why. If it's not big enough, you're just gonna disregard it. You're just gonna give up. You're just gonna go back to that comfort zone. For myself, the reason that I did not go to that comfort zone was because I remind myself about that big why. And the big why, it was no longer about just myself. I see my family suffering back home. I have this conversation with my sister. I cannot let this whole path that I was building be derailed because one single thing. So stay true to your why and keep going.
Where did you draw the strength from? Because that took a lot of strength of character. Where did you draw it from? I'm still not, respectfully, I'm still not getting what I want. I'm not getting from you as to where do you find that strength? Because, you can talk about your why and understanding your why. We can, and I understand that. But you have to still have strength to perform what you did.
You need to go through pain.
Right. Now you're talking.
Tell me about,
look, if it's too personal, we don't have to talk about it.
Not at all.
Tell me about the pain and tell me how you overcame it, because this is now the problem with youth. Not the problem with youth. This is the problem that youth is experiencing, is that the pain is, they have to go through the pain. You must go through pain to get to the other side of it, but they're not equipped to do it. And that's why we're seeing right now, like a global epidemic of depression. And I see it all the time. People in their 20s, forget about teens, people in their 20s, constantly depressed, going through stuff, going on medication. How do you get through the pain to get to the other side? How did you do it at this age?
Well, at that point, you just need to keep going. I know it's easy to say.
Right.
You just need to be looking into what's around you. Don't let it influence you. And if you just want to continue going in the direction that you believe you want to pursue, you need to be embracing that pain.
Yeah.
And use it as fuel. Because sometimes in life, you have options. The option of going in one direction or the other.
Yeah.
And sometimes to not even do anything. I always choose to take pain and use it as fuel to go in that direction. So any obstacle that you're facing, it's always good to look at it and grab it, rather than try to push away from it. Because that's what we see nowadays. Like, people try to stay comfortable. They see something a bit difficult, a little bit of resistance, and it's just something that they pull away from. The other day I had a flat tire, and I was just sharing this on social media because it was funny. I actually love when these things happen to me. And it sounds pretty contradictory, and people will think like I'm crazy, but every day that I face resistance, it's a perfect explanation that I'm going in the right path.
Yeah.
Because when you don't find that resistance, that means that you're not doing something that is making you grow. And look, things like a flat tire has nothing to do for you to grow or not, but it's the character that you're building in those moments that is going to define how you face other things in life.
I'm listening to your story, and it's interesting because what I'm realizing, and the more of these conversations that I had a lot of these conversations before I started this podcast, but they were always informal. And it took for this podcast for me to come to the realization that there is a direct relationship with how difficult someone's life is or someone's circumstances are early on or even along the way to the amount of success they have. Meaning, the more difficult the circumstances were or are, the more successful that person is. And I'm seeing it over and over and over again. And I'm not seeing people who had this, they didn't have any trauma, they didn't have any obstacles, they didn't have anything like that to overcome, and they turn out kind of like average, And then there's nothing wrong with average, it is what it is, but they don't achieve the things like you achieve or other people achieve. Like, I know people who they've gone through hell, like just terrible things like death, incarceration, just terrible, terrible things. And they come out the other side, like after, over time, just completely transformed and completely different. I feel it's almost like a cocoon. It's like a chrysalid, like with the caterpillar in the cocoon. And maybe I'm getting too philosophical, but okay. So you're here now. I want to get back into the timeline of your life. You're working. Did you eventually heal your foot and get your tennis scholarship back? Okay, so you got back on track.
Yeah. I'll summarize it a bit so that we can get more up to today.
Yes, of course.
I think the whole point here, and just to back up a little bit of what you were talking about, is about seeking the discomfort, right? Every time that you seek discomfort rather than the comfort, then that's where you grow. And in this case, yes, it was very uncomfortable, right, to be picking up trash on crutches or having to go through these obstacles at the time. But eventually, everything went through nicely.
Yeah.
I healed, became captain of the team. We went to nationals.
Wow.
I ended up not only focusing on tennis, but in my education, because I was getting academic scholarships. So I became valedictorian, student Hall of Famer. I became, somebody that became interesting to look up for, and not only because of the results, but because of the impact that you're having on a community. Because when you no longer do things just for yourself, when you do it for others, then you start putting much more effort because you know what that impact is going to look like. So for me at that time, it was, okay, instead of trying to beat everybody, is how can I add value? How can I help? How can I make something that is going to help everyone grow together? And that's when I started to get more involved with the school. I started to become president of Delta Mu Delta International Honor Society. I became part of the student government, got part of the Student Hall of Fame, valedictorian. I started to do things that had an impact on the time. And I think that if you move past forward, I remember I was actually going to leave that place. And during the graduation, I was giving the speech. And it was the president that said, like, they opened a new position in marketing and they would like me to be the guy managing the whole marketing department. And it was a very special moment, and that happens because you don't give up, because you actually continue going through those obstacles and you grow along the way. So that was a beautiful journey in college. Then I eventually moved to Florida, where I went into a master's degree. I did my MBA.
I saw that.
And ended up getting also some sorts of scholarships. And eventually what happens as a student, international student, is that you have 1 year to work afterwards. It's called OPT. So I ended up getting an opportunity to work at a startup where I thought I could have like a strong impact and eventually get that scholarship.
Like a tech startup?
Yeah, it was marketing startup. That's where I was specializing on at the time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to provide value. And look, there is a lot of things in between that definitely we could talk about, but just to make the story short, I got the job. I ended up becoming very successful in that position. And in the short amount of time that I was there, was able to prove myself as a valuable candidate to get that visa, right? And eventually stay in the country. What happens there is that there is not 100% guarantee that once they sponsor you that you'll get that visa. So I didn't get it. So after I was finally fulfilling my dream, my vision of being in South Florida, operating at a large scale in business, making good money, having all the things I wanted and being able to help, and you have this amazing lifestyle already all in place, then boom, visa is taken away. You need to leave the country right away.
I remember you told me this. I remember.
And it was a wake-up call. Right? And we come back to the same situation. What you decide to do after moments like this is what defines who you become.
So hold on a second. So you said that you were already this was the startup you were working at. This is
Yeah.
what happened, or you were already had Super Luxury Group.
No. That was me working for somebody.
So you were working for someone. Things were already progressing, and then you didn't continue with that company, and therefore the visa didn't renew, and you couldn't find another company quick enough, I guess, to sponsor your visa.
No, the thing is that when we went through the process of getting the visa, I didn't pass the lottery for them
Right.
to review my case. So the moment that I did not get the visa approved, my boss at the time said, look, there is no choice, but we have to let you go, because I was the director of operation. I was managing over 100 people, and it was a lot of things going on in the business. It was a really fast growing startup. So I had to be able to be there, or it will not work. So I had to leave the country.
Where did you go?
Well, that's the same situation, right? You have 99% of the people that tell you, well, you have a great resume, you've done so amazing, you can go back to Spain, get a great job, and da-da-da-da. And then you have your instinct telling you, no, that's not what I want to do.
How old were you?
23.
You're still a kid. You're still young.
Mm-hmm.
It's the second very stressful situation you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Well, the third, actually, if you count the financial crisis
Mm-hmm.
back in Spain, the injury, and now you're dealing with this situation where you had to leave the country.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You know, I think that is the most beautiful blessing that any person can have. Sometimes we get into routines that cloud us from the big purpose, that big why
Mm-hmm.
that we have in life. And it's good to redefine your vision a little bit, because I realized that my life was out of balance. I was not putting attention into things that I really love doing. And that's when I started to discover more the wheel of life. You start looking into not just your career, but also like your financial, your social, your health and physical, your intellectual, your spiritual, your family, and things that before you did not put that much of an attention. You realize, wow, I was putting so much time and effort into my career that I forgot about everything else. And it was right there where the direction was no longer go back to Spain and get another job. It was about to grabbing all the things that I'm passionate about,
Yeah.
and start building something that fuels my passion.
Okay. So, where did you go?
To the DR, Dominican Republic.
Right. You went to Dominican Republic. You're 23 years old. Social media is not even a thing yet. Like you haven't touched social
No.
media yet.
No.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get the timeline. Okay. So you're in Dominican Republic. And I believe I remember from that time we went out to lunch the first time I met you about 2 years ago. You told me you did work you started working in real estate there,
Mhm.
if I recall
Yeah,
correctly.
that's correct.
Okay. So tell me about that experience. So hold on a second. So you land in Dominican Republic. You now have like you have some money. You're not living hand to mouth. So you have a little bit of savings, I'm assuming, from your work. You have great experience working due to circumstances around your visa. So when you went to the Dominican Republic, in your mind, was that a temporary thing where you're going to be there temporarily and then come back to the States? Or in your mind, were you like, okay, I might try to make a life in the DR?
I always saw myself coming back to the States. You know, when they they push you, you're like, oh, I'm going to come back stronger.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my mind. It's like, all right, I'm leaving now, but I'm going to come back stronger.
Sure.
And it was about the path that I was going to take in order to come back to the States. So when moving to the DR, it was more of a chance of taking that opportunity, because my parents moved to the DR during all the financial crisis. They wanted to kind of reset their life. And just like a couple of years before I moved there, they were there. My father was trying to do real estate again.
Sorry, they relocated to there? Oh, that's why you went there. Your family was there.
Yeah.
So that must have been despite the fact that it was a stressful situation with your visa and that you wanted to stay in the States, that must have been a nice relief for you to be with your family again.
Yeah, instead of going back to Spain where all my family was,
Right.
I went to the DR where my mother and father were living at the time.
Okay, great.
And I remember there was an opportunity because my mother was selling real estate at the time. And there was this property that she sold that the guy that bought it is like, look, I'm not going to use it for more than a couple times a year. Could you guys rent it short term? And there was no such thing as the Airbnb and short-term rentals in the DR. It was something that was starting here in the States, but you will not see any of that in the DR.
Yeah.
And you could see that the majority of people that fly to that island was to go to the all-inclusive hotels.
Yep.
You start looking at all these properties facing the ocean, and they are empty. And that was a great opportunity to really tap into that industry, because the short-term rentals for these particular properties were completely empty. There was not happening. So looked at opportunity, decided to start a business with my mother. we said, look, there is something here. You are the marketing guy. You've been doing this. You got this. So we started working on this together, started knocking on doors, obviously started to look that there was a huge opportunity there. And there it was, started to work on that, which eventually it evolved to not only being renting these short-term rentals at the DR, but also in other islands and growing experiences, et cetera, which will touch base.
But okay, so how long did you stay there for?
Like a couple of years.
Okay, so it wasn't like a super long-term thing. But in the time that you were there, you managed to build out this business where you were promoting short-term rental properties.
Yeah, so the idea was to focus on quality more than quantity. And because we saw that there was an opportunity there, we started to grab those properties, reach out to the property owners, whether it was through the gatekeeper or housekeeper or gardener that we could find at the properties. And yes, we presented the proposal on how we could help them monetize the property while it was empty, plus also manage it, right?
Sure.
And I think that there was something that advanced a little bit afterwards, because we no longer just offer that, but also the experiences. Now, how did we get to have clients coming into these properties? Yes, we utilize the OTAs.
I was gonna ask, like, if there wasn't an Airbnb, the business you're talking about now is fairly common in the United States.
Super common.
People are managing.
Very common.
But I know, but that was groundbreaking what you were doing back then, because nobody was doing it. This was before this big boom.
You need to believe in something that it's new, right? Because sometimes you have to believe in something and go full throttle.
Yeah.
In this case, it was not happening. It was a very brand new concept.
Yeah.
And I remember it was quite of a struggle also to find people to want to rent it. So yeah, we placed it in the OTAs.
How did you find them?
Well, you wanted to focus on the quality. So if you look at the people that will rent this type of properties, it's like, okay, who does this? Who is already doing this business model, but at a larger scale or in different locations? Who does Will Smith hire when he wants to go to rent a villa? Who does Tom Cruise or all these guys, right?
Yeah.
And you start looking at the different companies, and there were like just a few that were doing it. And there was something very interesting there. It was that they had no properties in their portfolio on the DR. And it was a matter of just approaching them and being like, hey, these are the properties that we have here. We believe it fits amazingly in your portfolio. We can take care of everything you need in terms of your clients, because they don't have an office in the DR. So we started to build partnerships with the right companies. And that's how you start creating that bridge. And then you start receiving these clients, you start taking care of their full experience, and you start learning about really how these people operate. And eventually it got to the point where these clients move on, they go to a different destination, they keep on going with this company. And we decided to grow, and that was the kind of like the direction I wanted to take. It's like, we're not staying in the DR. I want to expand the business, and I want to become that big business. I want to be the one that we work on all the different locations. So took the leap of faith to start traveling. All the savings I had, I used them to just travel for 5 months straight, traveling all around, meeting with local partners that will provide their properties to put in our portfolio, rebranded the business, and that's how Super Luxury Group was born.
But Super Luxury Group today, I think, is
it evolved.
It's a very different business model.
Everything evolved. So there was something really interesting during that process, because once we ended up becoming that bigger company and having different locations in our portfolio, we no longer were working with these companies, right, that were providing us the clients. So how do we have access to these people? And I remember at the time, it's like, wow, we're kind of screwed here. So it was about finding the bridge again. How can we tap into other people's audiences? Call it the OTAs, right? And in this case, it was the influencers.
What does OTA stand for?
You can say other people audiences, other people stages, OPAs, OPS.
Okay.
And I think that at that time, the word influencer didn't even exist.
Yeah.
But it was a matter of identifying who do the people that we want to work with follow. And it was very easy to see it or identify it on social media. And we looked at a percentage of those individuals. They were what we consider today influencers. They live out of their personal brands.
But what platforms were they on back then?
Instagram.
So it was like the dawn of Instagram. It was the start.
Mm-hmm.
So you targeted so you would look at who these, let's say, affluent end users are in terms of like people who would vacation and grab a place for like 2 weeks or a month, and then you would see the type of accounts that they follow. I never thought of doing that. That's genius. So then you would go in, let's say if somebody follows, like let's say they're following like 300-400 people, you'd go through that entire list of 300-400 people. You would say, oh, he or she follows this celebrity, this celebrity, this celebrity. Yeah. You come up with somewhat of like a, I guess, an understanding of the type of people that they follow or specific people that they follow. And you would reach out to those people and then say, can I incent you to promote
properties? We were inviting them for free to stay at a property. So
brilliant.
We were talking to the owners, and I was telling them, the property doesn't rent 100% of the time. There is downturn. So let's have these type of individuals come to the property. We need to create content anyways.
Yep.
We need to promote it anyways. So may as well do it with them. And who's going to say no to staying at a $10,000 a night villa, right?
Yep.
And everything taken care of. So it was a win-win, and I remember it was a great, interesting model where all these people were coming in, they were shooting content, they were promoting the property, they were promoting our brand, and most importantly, they were helping us get towards the end users that we wanted to work with. And that's how we started building our network, and that's how we grew, that's incredible. How it expanded. And just to make it a little bit more appealing, I remember it was a matter of connecting the dots a bit farther. It's like, okay, it's a lifestyle. It's not just about the real estate. It's about the experiences and what are the products or the different companies that fit into this business model. So we started to partner up with a lot of luxury brands, and we started to provide experiences. And everybody that buys this type of cars is also somebody that will probably have this type of experiences. So it was about creating a whole circle and the foundation of SLG. And I remember at that time, I went back to Madrid, where I had a conversation with what I would consider my grandfather, very successful, smart guy. And I was telling him all about what we were doing, loved the idea, loved the concept, but the whole point was not to keep having the business in the DR, but to move it back to the States. So I remember this was a beautiful moment where he grabbed a napkin and wrote Super Luxury Group and handed it to me. And he told me, this is going to be the name of your business. Don't let anything stop you. And I grabbed that napkin, flew to Miami as a tourist to open the business, get everything all set up, and went through the process of the investor visa. And that was the last time I spoke with him. And that's why I keep so tight the name and the business.
And okay, I understand now. So it's interesting because it's coming full circle, because I have a much better understanding. I wasn't certain how SLG worked. I understand now in talking with you, bringing together the influential people, bringing together, basically, connecting all of these people, and it's brilliant how you're doing it, because now what's happened is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've evolved past the point of doing only temporary kind of rentals. You're actually selling homes with this process.
Yeah.
And that's your main business.
We don't even rent anymore. Right. That's how we started.
Right.
Then during COVID, I remember traveling was impossible, right? So we had to shift and we had to adjust the business model. So the same way that people were traveling, now there's people that want to sell their homes, that want to buy homes. So why don't we apply the same business model to real estate sales?
Yeah.
And we started to do that, became efficient. We also developed an exclusive network of real estate professionals that will benefit from what we've built already, because if there is one thing that we saw as well in commonalities is that a lot of people in that real estate industry, they lack of presence. They have amazing products, they're building amazing properties, or they have amazing listings, but they don't have the attention. And we were talking this at the beginning of the podcast. Attention is the strongest currency. Why did they do this thing in Dubai? Because they wanted eyeballs. And we were able to provide eyeballs through what we've built. We had access to the influencers, the media, the press, whatever you want to call it. We had it built already. So we started approaching these individuals by offering our services to help them market and sell, not just themselves, but their product. And it was a win-win situation. We started to attach our brand to their successes, because we were part of their successes. And that's what elevated the brand of SLG so quickly, and also associated my personal brand and the business brand into these individuals. So if you're looking for a pathway to accelerate your growth, you want to associate yourself with people that are already doing what you want to accomplish in life. You just need to find that little added value that you can bring to the table.
I follow what you're saying, and I want to say that what you've been able to do, in kind of combining the real estate and the social media, it's rare. And I'll tell you why specifically. So there's yourself, there's guys like Ryan Serhant, there's probably another small handful of them. But what's interesting is that if you were to ask me who are the authorities in social media on real estate, to me, it's you and Ryan Serhant. I can't think of anybody else. I really can't. You've also done a great job of combining your kind of adventure and travel into helping you build audience. Obviously, the book is a great catalyst for helping build audience. And what's really interesting is that I met a broker here who has a listing in the area. It's a $20 million listing. You know the one I'm talking about, but we're not going to say it. And the thing is that this broker, what they told me was that I'm trying so hard on social media. I get all these great inventory. I get these, listings that are worth so much. I have such a great relationship with the clients. I'm great at building relationships with the sellers. I'm great at brokering the deals. I'm great at finding the buyers. And I understand how much more everything will be if I can get my social media in order. And I put out all these videos and I try so hard and I have my image and I dress a certain way and I drive a certain car and I do all of these different things. But for whatever reason, I put out a video, it gets 20 views. You know what I mean? And it's frustrating. And I feel for this person, it's frustrating. But what you've been able to do is because it's two very different things. Like doing with real estate and everything that's involved in marketing a property, in relationship building on both sides, the buyer and the seller, the negotiation, the close, the administration. It's I'm not in the industry, but I've bought and sold properties throughout my life. It's very difficult, and that's its own discipline. How did you figure out? You have 1 million followers on Instagram. That's not an easy thing to do. Super Luxury Group is about to hit 680,000 followers. So between the two entities, you're at 1.7 million followers. How did you do that?
Well, in fact, we actually have over 1 million followers in SLG because TikTok, we have a lot of viral videos.
I didn't take into account TikTok.
Right,
I was just looking at Instagram.
We have many other platforms where we have amassed huge following, and we have different formats, right? In fact, on TikTok, we have videos that have 10 million views, and those are videos that perform very well in different platforms. So you have to account that there is different audiences for different platforms, but overall, yes, we've amassed a great following. And it's not just a matter of the following, it's about the people that you're doing things with. Right? A lot of people, they want to go and do a video and then they get 20 views. Why are you killing yourself with that? Be good at what you're good. Associate yourself with the people that have what you're lacking. And if somebody's doing better videos than you, bring them on board. Do something together. I was not pretending to become an amazing, successful real estate broker on my first year. This was not the intention. Neither I am a successful real estate broker in comparison to all these people. I am somebody that brings a lot of value to the table. And I will help clients that are looking to sell or buy multi-million-dollar homes any day, any time. And not because my expertise, but because the people that I work with.
And what's interesting is that what you offer with your, I don't want to say just audience, because that's not fully describing what the relationship with that audience and the personal brand. And I don't mean for this kind of interview to become a sales pitch. And I don't want people to think that that's what it is, but I'm truly fascinated with, because look, I'm in this industry too, as my wife and myself to a smaller degree. I'm truly fascinated with this because the service that you offer, brokers can't, to my point, this person can only get 20 views. But my point is that it's so difficult to do, to form that relationship with a large group of people where you're a thought leader in any given space, and you've really fused your adventure travel and your daredevil stuff, and I see it. With the real estate piece, the thing is people have to farm it out to you, and I think that from a business perspective, you're in a great position because the brokers, even they can't go anywhere else. They're going to you or Ryan. That's it. You want to sell a condo in New York, you're going to Ryan because he has that audience who are watching the videos. You have the audience who are watching your videos on multiple platforms. So you've created something that they can't do without, because they can't do it themselves. It's the same reason people come to Valeria and they have a clothing line and they need they can't. And these are big companies. We deal with big companies like clothing that everybody owns, or that have mass penetration globally, and they can't. Like, if you ask them, go tomorrow and create a video that's going to organically get 1 million views, they can't do it. So they have to reach out to people like Valeria.
100%.
And in real estate, they have to reach out to you. And it's funny because almost every listing, I really keep my eye on the market because I really struggled to buy this house. So I now I'm just like addicted. Like, I'll go to a realtor every day. And I also follow SLG on Instagram. And it's funny because every time I see an interesting property, boom, you have it. Like, it's a post that goes up within a day or two of it being listed. And I see that it's not your listing in particular, like as a broker, but you're promoting it. So in any case, look, I think from a business perspective, I think it's I'm kind of geeking out on the business side of this conversation rather than the personal side, because I'm passionate about it. But the path, if you kind of look and you do an audit of the path where you went from, doing this in DR and like on a relatively kind of modest scale, finding people for these short-term rentals, to go through everything that you've gone through, amass the audience that you've gone through, learn how to create content and edit content and connect with audience and community manage and all of the things that you've done to get to the point where you're now promoting the sale of multi-million-dollar homes. It's an incredible story, and you should be really proud of it, because
I appreciate it.
Starting from nothing, it's a real feat. And I guess I'm more appreciative of it because I'm in the industry too, and I know what it takes. So that's great. Look, that's wonderful. So, in terms of your book, okay, before we get to the book, when did you start building out your personal social media?
Oh, it's a good question. And look, first of all, I appreciate what you just said. And it takes one to recognize another one, right?
Thank you.
Now, I will say that in order for you to build anything, you need to have a strong team, right? You want to associate yourself with the right people.
Yeah.
And people say that you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go farther, go with the right people.
Yeah.
So this is a long-term game. This was not something to just do in one day and that's it. So it was about identifying who do we want to work with and building those strategic relationships or partnerships. And what we said at the beginning, the OPAs, right? Who has those audiences that we want to seek? Other people's audiences.
Other people's audience. I love that. Okay.
And we started to tap into that heavily. And that's how we were able to amass a big following. And I remember working with a lot of the influencers at the time and seeing how they were growing their brands and amassing different opportunities. And eventually I was thinking, well, if these people are doing it, why would I do that to myself?
Right.
And not only for the business, which was already growing nicely, but start applying it to myself. And I started to put a little bit more of attention towards building my personal brand. You want to identify yourself as somebody unique. I like the word outlier. Like, how can you become an outlier? And again, it's not about doing something that is different, that is just going to be a wow effect, and then that's it, one and go.
Consistency.
You want to stick to something that you can do consistently, because as you said, consistency is the key for anything. And a lot of times that consistency will come if you do something that you love doing, right? It might sound a little bit cliche, but if you do something that you're passionate about, you're going to have less resistance of doing it consistently. If you love to go to the gym, you're going to have much easier success posting regularly about things that relate to the gym or health if you already are doing it. So this is a matter of combining passions and bring them into the game of whatever industry you're in. If I'm in real estate, how can I bring my other passions into it and make it a unique mix that will make me become an outlier? If I love skydiving, if I love adventures, if I love traveling, if I love glam, if I love, flying helicopters, how can I bring it all together? And it's just a matter of utilizing social media to showcase that in a very cool way.
You're really simplifying it. Come on, it's but you're simplifying. I mean, respectfully, you are simplifying it because, again, in order to build audience at scale, I know it's like, if it was the way you're describing it, it's consistency, it's doing these interesting things. I get it, but it's not so simple because there are people doing everything you're saying, but they don't have a certain it factor. They don't have a certain kind of, like, I don't even know what you call it. You have it. Valeria has it. I'm trying to get it. It's like a likability. It's almost like some kind of a connection where you can tap in at scale into other humans. and get this attention. So it's certainly not easy to do. But
have
when
to
did you
practice.
when did you start? No, I know. But so you're saying that it's a lot of it is built on what you call OPAs, which I call collaborations
Right.
with other influencers.
That helped a lot initially. Now, doesn't really happen as much. And I know that there is platforms like Instagram pushing even that feature
Yeah.
of like collaboration
Yeah,
posts.
yeah.
Because what before a tag will represent or a mention will represent in
Yeah.
a post, now it's nothing. You know, people are so saturated with so much happening on social media that they just skip through. Before, there was not so much content. I remember having a video a couple years ago of me jumping out of the side of a plane on a suit.
I saw that.
And that video was reposted everywhere. Even Shaquille O'Neal and some like big celebrities
Yeah.
were sharing this post. It got over 300 million views on social
Wow.
media. And I remember that even on Forbes, they saw it and they did a feature where they call me the action man of real estate. So yes, you can have one of those hits that it goes viral and then you monetize it somehow.
Yeah.
And that's great. That gives you momentum because from there forward, you need to stay consistent
Yeah.
and keep on building, keep on posting things. And you want to also understand your audience because sometimes one of the things that you realize is that once you're building that audience and you start seeing some of those viral videos, and again, viral could mean 300 million or it could mean 50,000 views.
Sure.
Depending on what you're usually getting.
It's relative,
If
yeah.
you get 20 views like that guy and all of a sudden he gets 50,000, that's a viral
Yeah,
video.
absolutely.
So he will have to focus on doing more of that. So for me, it was a matter of identifying what was working and doing more of that. So I realized that doing this like James Bond kind of style content where you combine the adventures, the traveling, the glam, the sexiness, but also the real estate, the entrepreneurship, that's what really made uniqueness of my profile. And then eventually that's what stands out. That's what makes you become that outlier because there is a lot of people that do real estate.
Yeah.
So how do you differentiate yourself from everyone else? And how do you use social media to really make it even stand out more?
Well, I think that your social media is a reflection of your reality. Like
Yeah.
you're not doing all this adventure
No.
stuff or going to these beautiful homes and spending time there because you're not doing it for social media. You do it and you're documenting it.
There's one thing that you said at the beginning, and I want to reemphasize on it, is the word authenticity.
Right.
You want to become authentic because that's what makes people connect with you. If you're just doing something for the sake of getting attention,
Yeah, for sure.
it's not going to work in the long term. You might have one thing that works, but in the long term, it's not going to work. You need to be authentic, and that's how you build your brand. And not only by becoming authentic, you're going to connect better with people, but also by staying consistent, by doing that every single day. I call it the breadcrumbing. You want to be showcasing little pieces of what's going on throughout your day.
Yeah.
Some people just post and they forget about everything else, but there's so many tools out there that you can utilize nowadays to add value and to showcase what you're doing. And this is just one of the most beautiful things that people can start doing more and more. People think, oh yeah, but I'm not as cool as you, Alvaro, or I'm not as cool as Gary. I'm not like this guy that has all these things going on every day.
You don't need to be.
You don't need to. Just
Yeah.
focus on what is it that you want to showcase and start finding the angle that not only becomes entertaining or interesting, but also valuable. Like, hey, you might be at a conference, and I do a lot of motivational speeches, and I sometimes speak to people about, you're at a conference, whatever you're learning here, post it. I'm sure that a lot of people that follow you don't know about some of the things that you're learning here today. You watch a video today, share it. Say something about it. You just read something in the news that it's interesting, share it. There is some things that you can do every day that you're going to add value and you're going to entertain. So do it.
Yeah, no, look, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so my understanding is that when it comes to your business, the way that you monetize your social media, I don't see you doing brand deals.
Mm-mm.
So, I know they're calling you. Are you turning them down?
It's a matter of working with brands that you really want to work with, that align with your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I will always promote things that I take or that I use or that I like.
Right.
That's it. I did a campaign with Uber. They pay me. That was fun. That was cool. That was actually the first big brand campaign I did. And I thought, why not? I use Uber. It's cool.
Sure.
Let's do it. And it turned out a very cool campaign. And aside from that, like when I go to red carpet events or I do these crazy challenges of sports, I have brands that have approached me that wanted to do something, I try the product first. And if I really like it and it goes hand on hand on what I really like, then I will promote it.
Yeah.
And we will come up with a system of whatever works best. But I will only promote things that I know that are good for me, that other people will benefit as well. And I think that's the core of the authenticity that we're talking about.
Well, it's doing the right thing, right? You don't want to promote stuff that you don't believe in yourself.
Right.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's
so
exactly right.
Where are you at now? So again, well, before we get into that, like, talk to me about the book. How did the genesis of the book come into play? Like, how did this happen?
You read it at the beginning, and it was such a beautiful passage because it is true. I was facing a lot of people that they had these big dreams and they got derailed and they gave up on it. And it was very frustrating to see a lot of my friends and family members that at some point they shared some dreams they had and they never went for it. And I wanted to kind of like showcase my story as a representation that no matter the obstacles that you're facing, you can turn them into superpowers. And it is just a good opportunity right now with the social media following that I've been growing over the years to put that out there. Because if you utilize only social media to make money or to entertain people, you're not tapping into the real value of social media, which I do believe is have a positive impact.
Yeah.
And if my story can inspire or empowering others to go after their wildest dreams, to become that hero of their own journey, then I feel good about how I'm using social media. And the book just came out of that. A lot of people wanted to also know the version of Alvaro, like what we're doing here today, right? They see just this guy on social media doing all these crazy things and, okay, how did it start? You know, so this is also a representation on getting a bit deeper into who Alvaro is. Mm-hmm. And it was a great project on a personal level to actually like align your story, align your thoughts, align everything, and to use it as a propeller forward, because it is very beautiful to see where we come from and where we are. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we forget about that. You know, we are only looking into what's next. Sometimes to look where you're coming from.
Yeah.
It kind of redefines again on where you're heading. And it's very beautiful.
You know, I think that you're in a group of, we'll call it influencers, who operate kind of, it's a small cohort of influencers. You're one, and I know Valeria is one as well, where you're operating from a position of not just doing it as a business, that it turns out to be a business and obviously very beneficial, which is wonderful, but you're building long-term by truly providing value and not just grabbing attention. Although it's called the attention economy or the creator economy, it really is about long-term. So I think that there's this small cohort of creators such as yourself and Valeria and a number of other ones that are really building out personal brands for the long term. And I'm a big believer in that. So you're doing that with the book and with all of the other things that you do. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
I'm 29.
You're 29?
Yeah.
You're 29.
Yeah.
So all of this and you're 29. Wow. I mean, the rate at which this is accelerating for you in terms of, SLG and your personal brand, your book, and all of your different things, like, what's the end game for you? I mean, your end game is so far off. I mean, like, if your end game is in your, let's say, 60s or 70s, I mean, it's far off. But where is this going? Are you scaling SLG globally? Are there more books coming? Are you growing your audience, or all the above?
I just keep leveling up, brother. No, okay. But that's the concept of level up, right? Is to always go for the next level. And it's not just as the career matter, it's in every area of their life. It's okay, I have SLG in terms of the career, but how can I grow also my financials in terms of my investments, my spiritually, right? Like that spiritual area of the wheel of life. This year I was putting a lot of effort into it, right? I went into this 10-day silent meditation retreat. I've been doing a lot of things to keep on aligning, and I think that that's a beautiful concept to focus on. So every time that I look into a new year, I look into my misogi. Misogi is a term in Japan that is for that huge goal that scares you, that is going to push beyond your limits. And some people just do that one misogi that defines the rest of the year for them. I like to do a misogi for each area of the wheel of life.
And is that like something like a dangerous
No, not a dangerous thing. It's something that is like pushing beyond your limits, something that scares you. Like in my career, what can I do that is this? Like this year, for example, for the physical area of the wheel of life, I chose to do the Marathon des Sables, which is the toughest foot race in the world. It's 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara Desert. And it's self-sufficient. You need to carry all your food and supplies. And look, it's not an easy task.
No.
It's just meant for a few people in this world to even go after that. And on top of that, I wanted to make it a bit more meaningful. And I was carrying a weight in my bag that said the weight of depression. Because again, I wanted to utilize this as an opportunity, not only to challenge myself, but to bring awareness to the mental health issues that so many people were struggling with, and to carry those stories with me and those names throughout the desert, so that at the end of the race, I will bury that weight in the desert.
Wow.
And look, we can have a completely different podcast just to talk about this particular challenge, because it was very powerful. But the whole idea here is that what's next? It's keep on leveling up in every area of life. And I have a huge vision, right? I envision like very, very amazing things. I'm working right now on launching a new course for Level Up. I'm working on a retreat where people are going to come to have like this unique few days to level up in their lives. I'm working on improving the way that I'm giving the speeches. I'm having more opportunities to speak at huge conferences. I want to host a big conference as well. And in terms of SLG, we're continuously growing global. We're talking right now to a production company to put together a TV show. So there's a lot of things that we're on the works right now. And look, if I start lining up each one of them for each area of the wheel of life, the list will be very big.
Sure.
But that's what keeps things exciting. That's what keeps things moving. That's how you keep on building momentum. And that's what makes life exciting.
Good for you. You know, I want to make an observation about you. And because, to be honest with you, you come across older. I don't mean your aesthetic.
The beard.
Well, the beard is one thing, but I don't
also
mean
being in the desert damages your skin a bit.
No, you don't. No, that's not what I meant. I mean, you come across as older because you seem wise. You seem wise. That's why I was a little taken aback when you said you're 29. But what I want to tell you is that in order to do what you do, and this is something that I want to I'm trying to tell the audience, that there's always this difficulty between finding the balance of modesty and self-promotion, and to be relatable and just to be in general a good human being. We relate kind of being good and kind to being modest, but at the same time, when you're trying to push a message out and you're trying to appeal to people at scale, you do have to own your own you have to own your successes. And I find the most difficult thing, like when I look at influencers, I just have this debate with Valeria a lot, so I'm very familiar with this, is like you want to be modest because it feels like it's the right thing to do, and you don't want to be kind of a show off. And then on the other side of that, you also have to own your successes, and you have to be your own best self-promoter. And the observation I want to make about you is that your demeanor, you blend it so well. You know what I mean? Like you're simultaneously owning your successes, but in the conversation that I've had with you, and this is the deepest conversation you and I have ever had. You know, we've talked before, but we've never sat down for an extended period of time. But in speaking with you now, you have that balance between promoting yourself, because I see it in your content, and I even see it here talking with you. You have the balance between that and at the same time having that modesty that it still allows you to connect, and it's still, you still project as a kind person. So if I had to make an observation, I would say that one of your, besides all the achievements we've talked about, one of your biggest achievements is striking this balance, because people have a hard time with it.
No, I appreciate it.
So I want to commend you on that, because it's not an easy thing to do.
No, that's very kind of you, and I appreciate it. And in fact, it's something that I'm facing more and more now as a struggle rather than an improvement.
You're struggling to promote yourself.
It's just the situation itself with social media. As you're doing more podcasts or you're speaking more in front of an audience, because yes, you have to promote what you're doing, right? Because if you don't do it, who else is going to do it?
Correct.
But then sometimes when, let's say the other day I did a podcast in Spanish. It was one of the few podcasts in Spanish that I did. And they grabbed little pieces of the whole conversation that came across a bit like cocky, because it was just talking about the actual thing that I have accomplished. They didn't see the whole picture. And I remember one video went viral, like over half 500,000 views, and so much hate. Like, oh, this cocky guy. But then also a lot of people like saying amazing things. And there was this battle online. It was like, wow, it's the first time in my life that I'm getting hate comments.
Really? That was the first, after having as many
Yeah,
followers,
and
that was
I
the
remember,
first time?
and I remember my girlfriend, who was also like a big influencer.
Yeah,
of
I know.
it. She's like, "Oh, you'll get used to it. It's normal."
Yeah.
But for me, at first, it was, wow. And I was actually like replying to every single comment politely, but then I realized that's part of the game. You just need to deal with it. And the funny thing that I found out is that, look, people don't know you. They just judge something based on 10 seconds that they see, which is good for them, whatever. If they feel jealous or they feel excited or empowered, those are different situations and different feelings.
So you cared. When that happened, it cared. It bothered you.
I care 100%. I went to each one of those comments and I responded a long message, putting on a lot of effort, but then this is not gonna help in the long term. It's zero gonna help in the long term. And one of the things I realized is that, look, people are gonna judge you regardless.
Yeah.
In a good or a negative way, you're gonna be judged when you put yourself out there. So you just need to stay authentic to yourself and keep on trying to become a better version of yourself. You know, we are our own best criticizers, right?
Yeah.
So we're here to keep improving. We're not perfect. I'm not pretending to be perfect. But yes, as you said it, you have to tap yourself in the shoulder and congratulate you when you're doing something right and promote it and talk about it, because some people might see it as like, oh, look at this guy. But some others might be like, oh my God, look at this guy.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're able to impact more people than the ones that actually get offended or judged, then you're winning. And a lot of people, I remember, probably happened to you or Valeria, had a friend of mine that we were having a conversation. And I remember he told me, oh, so what have you been up to? It's like, oh my God, I just came back from this trip. Didn't you see it? I posted on social. It's like, oh no, man, I gotta tell you. And look, don't get offended, but I had to unfollow you. It's like, really? How come? It's like, it was hurting me. It's like, hurting you?
Jealous?
And it's like, yeah, I need to work on it. But I realized that I was just jealous. And because we grew up together. We grew up doing the same things. And you're doing amazing. And I'm just still stuck in my life. So it was just causing me so much pain.
Well, what did you deduce from that? Did you think, oh, I have to scale back on what I show? Or did you think you need to fix your, like, you need to maybe level up, like literally to...
So that's why I'm actually launching the course, and I'm doing a bit more of a deeper, I guess, understanding of the situations, because I realized that if people feel some sort of pain because of what they see, that's good also. Sometimes I was posting this Marathon Monday where I go at 4 a.m. and run a marathon, and some people are like, oh, you make me feel like shit. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Move your ass. Do something, right? Because the moment that you feel something, that's a trigger, that something needs to be changed. Now, what you do after you have that trigger or that feeling, it's going to depend all on you. So if you are able to identify that you're having some sort of like discomfort with your current situation, that's good. Now that's going to help you take action towards the next thing. And I want to help people to actually level up in their lives, because the same way that I also was in that situation where I saw people doing amazing and I was struggling, I was like, oh man, but I took action, right? And I went forward into a path that, yes, was full of obstacles, but then those obstacles turned into superpowers, and it took me where I am today, which is far from where I want to be. But people that currently are feeling that jealousy or that pain when they see success online, because if we look at the overall of social media, 99% of what people post is all about successes. There's not much talking about their failures.
Yeah.
So people that are not strong mentally, they might feel like diminished and insecure. While in reality, if you're able to look at it just as motivation, but then find the angle to keep on going towards your path and keep on growing, and comparing yourself at the end of the day with yourself. I compare myself with who I was and who I want to be. That's why this book was a great project, because the moment that you start writing, you start realizing a lot of things. So just a great analysis of what we were talking about.
No, look, this is great. You know, I'm happy that I'm doing this long form content, and because again, like I mentioned through this podcast, I have no idea where it's going. It's just something I'm doing out of passion, and it's conversations like this that a lot of my conversations end up being like this. Not all, but a lot, where I go in with one premise and I don't know what's going to happen. And this was a very pleasant surprise. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I think you should do more long form. I think you should do more sit downs like this, because as much as I follow you and I consume your content, and and we've had interactions in the past, I feel like you're you're able to, and you and most people I feel are able to provide a lot more value in this long format where they can sit down and they can relax and they can really have a meaningful conversation. And I feel like in general, like social media, we're so rushed now because, you know, the platforms are, for economic reasons, adhering to the short attention span of the user. And so we're running around as creators, you know, because you know what, out of this 90-minute conversation, you know, I'm going to make 10 short clips, right? And I'm going to post them up. So, and we have to do that in order to get attention, and hopefully some of those people will convert into the long form. But the true value is in the long form. Anyway, so I'm pleasantly surprised by this conversation because of the amount of value I'm extracting from you for the audience. And it also further validates to me why I should keep going in this format, even though the world has like a 15-second attention span right now. But I'm going to keep making these 90-minute videos. And I urge you to continue to make these as well. And I hope you do this as well. I'd like to see you do a podcast where you're putting out an episode a week.
You know, it's an actual beautiful thing that you're doing here. And I go back to the same thing, right? There is not going to be maybe a huge audience for the long format videos, but the audience that is going to consume this type of content are the ones that are going to look forward to grow and are going to make an impact in the future, because these are the people that we're looking for to help. Those that want to get helped. Those that want to get that interesting conversation, information, and apply it into their lives. If you're just looking for entertaining, this could be entertaining as well, but it's more educational, it's more inspirational, it's more empowering, something that you might reflect yourself upon. That's why people read books. And look, I congratulate you for what you're doing.
You.
I appreciate also being here. And in fact, yes, I'm doing these SLG meetups, which is how we initially met, but I want to take it a bit further, level up the concept, and do a bit more of a formal concept like this.
Well, listen, if there's anything I can do to help in terms of, like, I feel I have a good infrastructure with my production team and everything that I do. So if there's anything I can do to help, feel free to ask. On that note, I want to thank you, Alvaro. I really appreciate this. And we have to make a point to hang out socially a little bit more.
Yes. Not to just bump into each other in Dubai.
Absolutely.
But
it was a pleasant surprise bumping into you in Dubai.
It was one of the most beautiful things.
Now every time I go to an activation somewhere with Valeria and we're in some exotic place, because since then we actually were in Spain, we're in Ibiza, and I'm always looking out because I think I'm going to run into you.
Yeah, exactly.
Valeria always jokes, I bet we're going to see him.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Well, I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you again, my friend.